plongée vers les ciels de Méditerranée. Échappons-nous vers l'horizon.
Buenas tardes, ministros, colegas. Si vamos tomando asiento.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Please be seated. Good afternoon, ministers, delegates. Please be seated so that we can start with this last session. The last dialogue of the day. I know we're all tired, but it's been all very positive. So this last segment is focused on strengthening of alliances or partnerships. If you look at it, yesterday we were discussing a lot of priorities, some other topics in depth. And the idea today was to focus more on what are the means we need, both in terms of funding, how to accelerate actions, to also be able to talk about partnerships, alliances, how we engage other stakeholders beyond the public and private, like cities or non-state stakeholders, so that that systemic change can be done. So in that line, this last segment, we have several of the participants here inside. Likewise, one of our participants or two of our participants are connected. I'm first going to give the floor to her, Ingrid Hoven from GIZ, for us to begin with this panel. Ingrid is in Germany, and because of time schedule, we're going to have this courtesy. And then I'm going to ask the panel members that are here with us, Felice, Paulo, Brian, to go to the chairs on stage. And we are going to begin. Ingrid?
Thank you for being here. What a pleasure. Thank you.
Igualmente, bueno, voy a empezar.
Likewise, so I'm going to start with some words in Spanish. Minister Andrea Mesa, Excellencies, it is a great honor and a pleasure to be today in this meeting.
Inviting me to this very important forum, and also for this panel with these very distinguished panelists. As has been widely discussed these 2 days, the world is dealing with a multiple crisis, mainly regarding climate change, biodiversity loss, and environmental pollution, which have been amplified by the current global pandemic. These crises are not sequential, but rather simultaneous and interrelated, and provoked risks reinforce themselves. In a nutshell, we are not only facing the impact of one pandemic, but we are dealing, and we will have to deal in the medium and longer term, with a situation that is characterized by a polypandemic situation. Therefore, solutions, actions, and partnerships have to address this new complexity. The experience of GIZ in working with many Latin American and Caribbean countries demonstrate that it pays off when we act in an integrated and multi-sectoral way. When we pursue multi-stakeholder approaches, which means we include civil society, the private sector, women, and the youth for our transformative discussion and consensus building. It pays off when we do combine short-term and longer-term strategic measures. There is a growing consensus that building back better, or a green economy recovery, is the only way to address the social, economic, and political consequences of COVID-19. In a way that at the same time we set course for a long-term shift towards a more safe and sustainable future for people and nature. Partnerships can and have to play a crucial role in accelerating action and transformation. This morning, you discussed, ministers, the need to mobilize additional resources at the national and international level, and by leveraging the potential of the private sector. This is absolutely needed. But at the same time, we should focus on partnerships that provide the kind of technical expertise, innovative methodology, technological innovation, capacities and communication skills that are needed as a complementary but very important additional input for a successful transformation pathway. And sometimes these little ingredients can really leverage a lot of action towards sustainability and climate protection. I would like to start with an example stemming out of such a beautiful partnership. GIZ, for example, supports the so-called Economic Advisory Initiative of the NDC Partnership, and I'm pretty sure that Pablo will give us more good examples of this and the impact of this partnership. We are working globally in 13 countries, and in Latin America, we do support 6 countries, including 3 countries which provide or get a direct support from the European Union-funded Euroclima Plus program. As part of this initiative, to be a little bit more concrete, the economic experts advise finance, planning, and environment ministries. They prepare studies and develop scenarios to demonstrate how a constrained budgetary envelope can be best used for the creation of additional green jobs and to leverage climate-friendly investments. In Colombia, for instance, the economic advisor supported the preparation of the national policy on sustainable recovery, including green transport, renewable energies, and sustainable production systems. In Costa Rica, under the same umbrella program of the NDC Partnership, the economic advisor worked directly with the Ministry of National Planning and Economic Policy by identifying big green recovery actions within the National Territorial Strategy for an Inclusive and Decarbonized Economy, mainly focused on the blue economy and sustainable agriculture. Let me also briefly highlight another area where more effective collaboration and strengthened partnership is very needed. Yesterday, it was underlined that around 80% of greenhouse gas emissions are being produced in urban areas. Therefore, the development and improvement of financing mechanisms at the subnational level is very crucial. And the modernization of municipal management capacities and the strengthening of technical expertise at the local level can be a major enabling factor to unlock climate-friendly action, change, and financing. The Climate Finance City Facility, where the European Investment Bank, the World Bank, the Covenant of Mayors, and the GIZ work together to build up a strong pipeline of investment projects by directly tackling the capacity needs of municipalities, is one example of a strong partnership between national and subnational entities and international organizations. Finally, and in more general terms, of course, we see a growing number of partnerships for different sectors, for different issues that are very important. But we have to bear in mind that certainly what counts is the commitment of those that form the partnership to join forces and to make better use of their complementarities between financial and technical organizations, between NGOs and state sector organizations. We have to bring together the various instruments of international organizations that are at our disposal and have to maximize synergies. And we have to increase effectiveness in our doing, in our partnering with the national governments and countries. So, of course, the NDC partnership is a great example of such an alignment and coordination between different actors that I've just mentioned. Also, the European Union's Team Europe initiatives aim at strengthening donor coordination and joint implementation between member states and partner countries. So there are good examples underway, but we have to accelerate the pace. We have to accelerate action for the well-being of our citizens and our partner countries. Let me close by reassuring you that GIZ, which has been working in Latin America and the Caribbean region for more than 40 years and in many countries, and we have built up strong, reliable, and very promising partnerships, that we remain highly committed to supporting you, the countries of Latin America and the Caribbean region, in implementing your green and transformative agendas in a way that nobody is being left behind. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ingrid. Thank you for sharing those views. And now I would like to give the floor, voy a pasarme.
And I'm going to switch to Spanish, to Felice Saqueo, the Chief of the Regional Operations Unit of Latin America and the Caribbean and DG of International Alliances for the European Commission. Felice, wherever you want. If you want, you can sit down or standing up. Thank you very much for being here, for coming here in person, and also sharing in this space. The majority of the countries, Euroclima is doing a series of activities, promoting dialogues, promoting a lot of interactions with different stakeholders. So we really like you to share those reflections. I don't know if I can speak without this. Please, thank you. Okay, before anything, great thanks to Andrea, Costa Rica, and all of you for giving us the opportunity It is great for me to be in this panel that is called International Partnerships, and it's a very important topic, and I think it is not by chance that I'm here, because as the title of our Direction General says, my Direction General in the European Commission, it is the Direction General of International Associations, International Partnerships. So this is what we believe can really push, promote things that can really give a different dimension to everything we do. And as always, global warming, together with what UNEP has done or analyzed, is a triple planetary crisis. It is a crisis of loss of natural resources and biodiversity. It is a crisis due to pollution. And this determines a global world challenge that can only be solved in a way, and it's by joining forces, working in association. It's the only way to overcome it. Of course, the pandemic has not made things easy, but the pandemic also, on the one hand, it has determined a health crisis, an economic crisis, but it has also demonstrated that a topic like the fight against climate change is essential to rebuild things. That is why, in order to build, in order to construct, it has been demonstrated that we need a green transition towards an available development model that does not leave anyone behind. So this is what has pushed us when we have established what we have called the Green Agreement. But this means a systemic change, this means a structural change that affects all the areas of our life model. A change in the way of producing, and one of the components of the Green Alliance is farm to fork, and that is essential. Consuming. So definitely it is a change. We're living a change, a systemic change in life. That's essential for all human beings. In the decisions we have to make and the depth of the change, we can solve these issues if there are strong alliances. And this implies all the sectors of society. This, from the perspective of the European Union in general, with the Green Alliance, and particularly also because in the region with the Euroclima program, we understand that very well in this sense, and that is why we are promoting those partnerships at different levels. It is essential to have the leadership at the government level of the ministers of the parts of the governments that are in charge of climate change and environment. But I think that we also have to involve other stakeholders. And for this reason, we promote a greater relationship between the different ministerial portfolios. I mean, the objective should be to place climate change and the green transition in the center of the political agenda, the development agenda, that has to be led by you, but that also has to involve other sectors of the government, like the finance ministry, the sector ministries such as energy, agriculture, economic development, trade, health ministries, education ministries. Those are all fundamental stakeholders that have to be involved. Because of reasons that I would explain, then it would be necessary to also increase the possibilities to access financial resources and involve other stakeholders. But I always use, we have the national contributions, nationally determined contributions, but there is no nationally determined contributions if there are no local determined contributions. And this is important because, for example, the results, the effects of what is happening beyond what has to be done at the national level. We talk about territories, we talk about cities, the effects of climate change, the heat waves, the flooding, the droughts, they all happen in the territories. And it is the local governments that have to face, first of all, these challenges. Therefore, we consider it as necessary to strengthen those local institutions, territorial institutions, and strengthen, reinforce the alliances and the connections between the different governance levels. From the Euroclima program, we promote planning processes. In that sense, climate planning at the territorial level, and countries like Chile, Costa Rica have already started in this process. In turn, the political decisions have to be based on solid scientific evidence. So we would need to have immediate data. We will have to immediately monitor, evaluate, continuously evaluate in a reliable way, in a profound way. And that is why we also have to create partnerships with the world of the academia, with the world of knowledge, that can support the institutions that make decisions in that sense. I want to conclude, I think, because all this makes a lot of sense. We need to have regulatory frameworks, we need to have reliable data, and so on. So that is all essential. But of course, we would also need substantial resources. And to have these resources, we need the financial sector. That is why I said that we have to involve the Ministry of Finance. We need the private sector that participate in the climate agenda. And we have to also give opportunities to have the resources available. So for this reason, for example, the European Union, in addition to the Euroclima program, which is a framework program of the cooperation in the struggle against climate change with the region, we also have financial cooperation instruments that are essential, fundamental for the preparatory work of the regulatory framework, and the establishment of policies can then be able to determine the investments. I just want to mention a couple of them. One is about the Facility of Investment for Latin America and the Caribbean now, which is called CIF, which is a leverage facility. And together with this, we also have the scheme, the new scheme of financial guarantee for the European Development Fund, also known as FSD+. We have a lot of pluses because I think that climate change needs a lot of pluses. So I want to conclude by thanking once again all of you for giving us the opportunity of being here. And I think that the message is that such a high-level challenge can only be done if we're all together. And I think that that's what we're doing at this moment. Thank you very much.
Felice, y un poco en esa línea.
Thank you. Along this line, I would like to invite Sebastián Navarro to listen to the vision and the importance of subnational governments, the mayors. Many of the sectorial policies we apply in the territory, there are a lot of competencies, they have budgets, and they have a key role. How can we work with those partnerships? I want to thank for your hospitality as usual, dear Costa Rica, that has marked the way with so many years before for this agenda, and send greetings to the national government and the President Carlos Alvarado Quesada. In name of our mayors, Jorge Aldana presides CIS-35 because there is a new administration in Honduras. Carolina Mejia, Deputy President for CIS-75 of the Caribbean. Mayor of Santo Domingo, Mario Duran. Mayor of San Salvador, Vice Chair of the Commission for Costa Rica, and Desi Hasler from Santiago, Chile. Deputy President, and the equipe of governance of CIS-35 2020-2022. Andrea Mesa, Chairman of this forum, I want you to know that we admire your leadership, your sensibility. The Director of Program on United Nations, Inger Anderson. Also, we're greeting the representatives of the UK Kingdom. Jacqueline Alvarez, Director and Regional Representative of UN for Environment, in charge of authorizing environmental authorities. It's an honor to be here. To all the ministers with whom we share the clear potentials of our region. First, we started the first forum of local authorities on environment. These are the focal points. It was so important that environment was a priority in a climatic condition that we thought it was necessary to empower the the environment authorities of the hemisphere. I want to talk about the sense of urgency that was said yesterday. So I would like while you hear me to have the latest images of NASA about the wildfires in our countries. We can see how is Latin America. These are the last 48 hours of NASA with wildfires in our region. The regions you are in charge of. We were talking about firefighters, so there's no better image than this one. What you see there is permanent, and will become serious with the increase in temperature. We're using 1.7 planets. Our planet is on fire. Those satellites and many others will be the eyes and partners of humanity to preserve the last global lungs. Is it clear during the first day that a main claim of the countries is to have a new financial architecture at the height of the system where we live in, and this should include everyone, and the goal is net to zero. We have to end with the bureaucracy that affects our own destiny. The good news is the financial sector decided to go to the decarbonization of the portfolios, and the resources cannot flow with the speed we need because the governments do not update the regulations in face of the challenge. CC 35 is the last climate institution of cities in the hemisphere. It have provided different examples on how coordinating with different levels of government through partners with the private and public sectors through a determined actions, we could announce some very good landmarks. We organized Arnold Schwarzenegger from California. I want to send the person who wants for it to be possible. Are you using capital for the creation for the first subclimate, $750 million with a contribution of 20% of Green Equity Fund, where we have coordinated national supports from Latin America, Caribbean, and that have identified projects and financial institutions for the counterparts. We have announced the first public-private agreements in protected areas that we estimate that will get 200 million income together with satellite mediums and help urban decarbonizations. I'm talking about protected province areas. Nature as inalterable capital for achieve the goals of the Paris Accord shows that this is a priority. We promote diplomatic alliance between Santiago de Chile and Glasgow to create and strengthen the route Santiago-Glasgow and the host of La COP, and to increase the local voice. We have announced in an initiative the only country with all the signatures with to 2050, 158 local governments that overcome ideologies to focus on urgency. Dominican Republic, great case for the countries. We expect to continue working with Orlando Mera to replicate this in the rest of the region. We took the first electric bus to Honduras. We have submitting the commitments for 8 capitals: Montevideo, Capítulo, Port-au-Prince, Guatemala, and Belmopan. Together with CEPAL, we have funded the first climate plans in the framework for the capital cities of the Americas that will lead the road for others. There were too many action plans that they didn't know, so it's a good model so the countries can work and see what is happening in their legislations. We work to declare emergencies, climate emergencies in Chile and Honduras in the National Assembly. Minister, we propose the secretary of the forum for next meeting an honest, multi-level, and transparent dialogue for the emergency of climate change, summoning a group from all the regions with the local authorities and heads of different governments, face-to-face with each minister to have specific requests about ecological requests and green funding, necessary incentives, and other environmental agencies that they can discuss this face-to-face. This is a multi-level action. Local diplomacy can be a beacon for Latin America and the Caribbean. Climate crisis will have a multi-level solution or not. 50% of the infrastructure for Paris Agreement should be done in cities, and that cities have the regulations on mobility, on waste, part of energy, part of industry to go to carbon neutrality. We also propose an initiative to increase protected areas of the planet and call 30% of protection for 2030 of the civil society. Quito is a great case because they have the first guidelines of protected areas. Veronica Arias was Secretary of Environment. This is a case that can be replicated in the other capitals and cities of all the continent, and it can be a great tool to get genuine resources of carbon. My last request for Haiti, the mayor of Port-au-Prince, who I met 3 or 4 months ago, we signed an agreement between C75 and Port-au-Prince to build a project to build and intervene the central, where there was the epicenter of the earthquake, was the first city hall carbon negative, yes, in Haiti. Because if we do it in Haiti, the bar will be so high and the standard will be so high, and we will hear good news from Haiti. We need to embrace Haiti because the more isolated it is, more isolated the people will be, and we can do this with local democracy. I ask you on behalf of the mayor to gather the funds for innovative activities that can put Haiti on the front page of international media. We owe it to them as friends, inspired by Costa Rica when it decided not to have an army, or Ecuador, the first constitution that gave back the rights to nature. We can set high goals for this challenge. I had a session after working with Santiago Glasgow, show people that from these lands they were some of the most important announcements, and we did this. Latin America has women and men in charge of the high positions. Let's use to this to drop down the walls between us. Negotiating together as Ecuador, Costa Rica, Panama, Colombia, showing that a political decision kills democracy. I ask the ministers if you are willing to act and give solutions and be remembered as the leaders that avoided self-destruction. If you are willing to remove the tariffs that avoid electric velocity or retrofit. Are you willing to increase your protected area up to 30%? If you are willing to decentralize the resources, no matter the political party, the cities that need more intervention, if you are created to your cap and trade, for example, inspired by California, or agency of nature penalties. If you are willing to negotiate together the largest ecological wealth that the earth has, if you are willing to measure carbon with new methodologies, so stop issuing debts and have genuine resources. Carbon will be the star commodity for our region, the intangible gold, and the last opportunity based on nature, Latin America and the Caribbean. And at the same time, we leave the extraction era. I agree with Alicia Bárcena and Carlos Correa from Colombia on fair prices. But if the volume is high, the price is more relative. We have to look for both. We have to get to Egypt with concrete announcements. We have the moral obligation to say more than 600 million people that are there. They don't want to be taken through the self-destruction roads, or those who use their taxes for suicide. Climate crisis is the mother of all battles. It needs multi-level actions where the local governments have voice together with national organizations. This will give more power to the nations who are this. If we achieved the fastest vaccine of humanity, no doubt we will be able to resolve this human crisis and guarantee all the rights that we have earned, putting political will together with science and economic and resources. For this to happen, we have to decide if we are willing to be on the pages of history as accomplices of global destruction and put the protection of life on this planet as a new way to govern. Pura vida.
Gracias, Sebastián. Gracias por todo.
Thank you, Sebastian, and thank you for all that energy and for the proposal. We're going to discuss that afterwards as a way of making the forum dynamic, to also have a dialogue with the ministers of finance and also mayors or representative from the subnational government. It is not a bad idea at all. Actually, it is an excellent idea, and it is something that when we are in the dialogue, we can talk about it. Now, I would ask Pablo Vieira from the NDC Partnership to share his reflections with us. Pablo also precisely from what a structure can do, a structure that in itself is a partnership, and what things you're doing of those lessons learned to accelerate climate action. Thank you very much, Minister Mesa. Dear Andrea, it is really an honor to be able to participate in this forum of ministers. Thank you for the invitation. Ministers, colleagues, I am very glad for having this opportunity, and especially to talk about the power partnerships, to be able to mobilize the resources at all the levels for climate change and the protection of the environment. And I'm going to talk about three topics, particularly one of them is a little bit to share the experience experience the history of NDC partnership, this experiment that has been on for 5 years, try to see a little bit towards the future, sharing some of the messages that we heard in Glasgow and we have been listening for the last couple of days and what we're going to do for this. And at the end, a brief reflection about the common challenges and the opportunities in the region to move forward as a bloc. The NDC partnership was created under the premise, simple and powerful premise, that together we can reach more. And it has been said many times, but doing it is very difficult, and we have made a great effort to be able to accomplish it. It is an initiative that is designed to accelerate the climate action through providing coordinated support, effective and agile support, for the countries, developing countries, to be able to plan and implement the climate engagements or commitments. Today, 5 years after the launching of the NDC partnership, I feel that it has been demonstrated that alliances are the best way to accelerate the climate action. In that time, we went from 35 members to more than 200 members among developing and developed countries, international institutions, agencies, and non-governmental organizations that are working hand in hand, guided by processes that are led by the countries. In that time, we have supported 80 countries of the world, including 21 in Latin America and the Caribbean, to implement their national contributions. 67 developing countries in the last couple of years received the support of 46 donors and implementing agencies for the process of the update of the NDCs. And 58 of those countries, it's great to say it, before Glasgow, delivered NDCs that are more ambitious from the point of view of mitigation and adaptation, including 20 from Latin America and the Caribbean. And this was all accomplished thanks to the mobilization of $1 billion in the last 4 years through more than 160 different partners, members and not members, that have been working in the territory directly with the governments to support the action, the climate action. This includes, very proudly, GIZ, Euroclima, the European Union in general, and UNEP, that is hosting us today, among many others. I believe that the results demonstrate that the partnerships are definitely the most effective way of accomplishing a collective impact and accomplishing that everything is more than the sum of the parts. And it's very important to say that all of you, the countries and the institutions that are members of the NDC partnership, you have to be very proud and inspired by these accomplishments, because it is your accomplishments, it is the accomplishments of all of us working together to be able to advance the climate action. I think that this is the evidence that partnerships are really the only way in which we can approach the environmental, social, and economic challenges that we are experiencing. Based on that, we have a clear understanding that the countries, and especially this region, have demonstrated their ambition. The updated NDCs are more ambitious, but not just that, it is very important to take into account the process through which they were accomplished. There's better information, they are greater in detail, they're more adjusted to the reality of the countries, and they were developed in a participatory, inclusive, and transparent way. This is a great accomplishment because the first round we couldn't do it, there was no time, there were no resources to do it, and then the NDCs nowadays are more implementable than the first ones, and they are going to help us move forward faster. But the implementation requires the coordinated support and also very ambitious support of the international community, because otherwise we're not going to be able to advance at the pace we require. And that's why, after listening to the countries with which we work, the agencies, during the meetings in Glasgow in the last couple of days, we believe that there are 3 priority areas of action during the next years. The first thing, and we have heard this in these couple of days, is the effective mobilization of funds for the implementation of the NDCs. To have implementation plans, clear implementation plans, accompanied by investment plans of these NDCs. This is the key to establish alliances at the national level that would bring all the sectors of the government together for a general approach, but also the international community with the resources, the agencies, the private sector to be able to provide resources, the civil society, because everyone will be necessary for an effective climate action, and to demonstrate, very importantly, the social and economic benefits of the climate action. Because at the end, what has been solved many times in the hands of the ministers of the environment is that the climate action makes sense because it is going to help us comply with sustainable development objectives, because it is going to help create jobs, because it is going to help reduce poverty and inequity. And that has to be demonstrated because the window to go back to the sector ministries of finance and planning to tell them we're going to increase the ambition in a couple of years, a little bit more, they're going to say, hold on, where's the evidence that this is working? And if that is not demonstrated, then it's going to be very difficult to continue increasing the ambition as required, and that is why the focus will have to be the implementation and the effective mobilization of financial resources for that. The second topic, and we have talked a lot about this, is to align the climate agencies and development agencies, the NDC's long-term strategies. They are some structures, as Juan Pablo just said this morning. They're key to be able to incorporate the climate priorities in the development plans and in the budgets, both sector as well as national budgets. And they're going to take the countries, or bring the countries, to serve as a reference framework for the coordinated action of the sector ministries, the ministries of finance, planning, but also to bring other stakeholders such as the central banks and the regulators that are essential in this exercise. Of course, the subnational stakeholders, the academia, the civil society, and the communities. Use the NDCs and the decarbonization plan is really that element that brings the whole society together to be able to move forward in sustainable development. The priority of climate action has to promote the social and economic objectives of the countries and also generate opportunities for the economic recovery after COVID. And the third one is the exchange of knowledge, and we have also heard a lot in these last couple of days that there are huge opportunities to learn from one another, those best practices to be able to accelerate the transition and implement a sustainable development model, to share experiences and best practices, and to work as a region or as a sub-region. That is all essential to be able to help the countries find solutions to common problems and move with the urgency that is required in climate actions. To conclude, I would like to reflect a little bit about the opportunities that the region has to work in coordination based on common challenges. In general terms, the region has already demonstrated its leadership and ambition in environmental topics and in climate topics. However, historically, and we have seen this in many of these meetings, it is very difficult for the region to present a unified face for the world in terms of the priorities and the needs as a region. But based on what has been said in this forum in the last days, there are several topics, but I think that the access to funding for the implementation of the climate and environmental commitments is definitely a common challenge on which the countries can get together. And we have dealt with this topic several times. First of all, the countries need to strengthen the institutional frameworks of policy, legal frameworks, and also their capacities to be able to establish an enabling environment for the mobilization of funds. And this includes transformational projects, as Colombia was saying. This includes the investment plans, as we said this morning, that would attract the funding, that will attract or bring the private sector to action. Really, there is a lot of support for this technical assistance that is easy to access, but it's not been accessed, and the opportunities are not been seized. I know that Felice presented it, I have presented it. There is a lot of opportunities over there to be able to work from the inside of the countries in mobilizing ourselves towards a greater effectiveness and mobilization of finance. But what is more important as a region is that the burden cannot fall exclusively in the countries. The financial institutions will have to make an effort also to facilitate the access to the existing resources. Yesterday, we heard ideas such as the harmonization and standardization of the processes to apply. And now we're talking about flexibility and agility. And I see this as the working area that can bring the region together, where a unified vision can put enough pressure on these institutions to be able to promote a real change, so that we benefit the countries, the developing countries around the world. So maybe we can have a joint task and bring it to Guinea, bring it to Egypt, and see how the financial institutions are going to come closer to the needs of the countries to demonstrate the same urgency and the same ambition that the countries are demonstrating. As the countries of the region move forward in the implementation of their commitments, let me tell you that the NDC partnership is ready to mobilize the support that you need to allow for the transformation of the environmental, social, and economic systems and promote the development, sustainable and equitable development that we're all looking for. The questions that I ask is, what can we do for you? And very pleasantly, we can mobilize the support that you need. And that is what makes us act as a partnership. So thank you very much for the opportunity, Minister, again. It is a pleasure, as always, to be here in Costa Rica and be with you here.
Thank you, Pablo, for this. Maybe I start sending ideas, a work team to talk about the specific situations, practical ideas, how to flexibilize, streamline, work on specific ideas that we can use with the different financial institutions and agencies. Now, Brian O'Donnell, Director of Campaign for Nature, to tell us from a platform centered on nature efforts, what they have been doing. Good afternoon, ministers. I just speak a little bit Spanish, and I apologize, and I'll continue in English.
Costa Rica for hosting us. This is such an incredibly beautiful country, and I know we're all honored to be here, and you've been so welcoming to all of us. You know, as we've heard throughout this forum over the last 2 days, your region, the Latin American and Caribbean region, represents more than half of the world's biodiversity. In fact, you have twice as many species of plants as the tropical regions of Africa or of Southeast Asia. What other region has jaguars and whale sharks and more than 5,000 species of butterflies alone? It is truly the most important region on the planet for nature, which makes you in this room the most important people on the planet for nature. When I think about what the future will hold, how many of those plant species we will have, the ones that have enriched all of our lives? How many will our children and our grandchildren be enriched by? How many of the services that we take for granted that nature provides, the clean water, the food, the pollination, the climate regulation, will future generations be able to rely on? Those are the decisions that you will be making, the most important decisions. So this gathering is incredibly important, more important than so many other things. Much of the media focuses on what's happening in other geopolitical things, but they miss the fundamentals of the planet. Without the work that you are doing to secure the livability of our planet, nothing else is possible for our economies, for our livelihoods, for our food, for our climate, and for our quality of life. And I can assure you that when you demonstrate leadership for nature, you will have partners willing to come behind you and support your bold leadership. It has been incredibly impressive to watch in recent years the leadership and the ideas that have been generated right here in the Latin American region that have become global standards for how the conservation of nature can move forward. A prime example was in Glasgow, when the Eastern Tropical Pacific Marine Corridor was announced by Panama, Costa Rica, Colombia, and Ecuador. We know that nature does not recognize political boundaries, and so your cooperation together was essential for those migrations of sharks, of turtles, of fish that requires this partnership between countries. And this leadership has not only been a partnership between countries, but it has inspired a partnership between institutions throughout the region. In fact, in this very hotel this week, another meeting is taking place just upstairs that has brought together local organizations, regional organizations, national organizations, global organizations, multilateral funders, private foundations, all partnering together because of the leadership that you have shown, which is inspiring people that when you show ambition, the partnerships can come together to make conservation a success. I've been working on conservation for many decades, and I've never seen such a collaborative effort on so many levels. You've seen occasionally countries working together, or private foundations, or some environmental NGOs, but across and up and down the sectors is new. And that's because of the leadership you've demonstrated here in the Latin American region with your ambition. The second area that you're providing global leadership is with the High Ambition Coalition for Nature and People. Costa Rica launched that initiative right here in San Jose 3 years ago, and quickly was joined by Grenada on the launch of that, also in this hotel here 3 years ago. That leadership, an alliance to protect at least 30% of the world's lands and oceans, has more than a dozen countries in your region have become partners of. I see Peru and Colombia and Jamaica and many others here who have all supported this. It's very exciting. And that leadership that the Latin American region has developed has now spread across the world, where 80 countries have joined together. But again, it's not just countries that have partnered. Because of the political leadership you are providing, we're now seeing foundations get behind your vision. In New York, at the UN General Assembly, foundations pledged $5 billion of private philanthropy to support implementation of this endeavor. We've seen scientists get behind this, as well as local national organizations. And we know that we can't protect 30% of the world's lands and oceans without partnerships. It will require academic institutions, scientific institutions, indigenous peoples and local communities, all working together with multilateral financial institutions. The Latin American region is to be congratulated for launching this initiative, and now it is already included in the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework draft. So the initiative that began right here in San Jose has become the flagship target, and we still have work to do to achieve that, but I think your leadership has proven that this can happen, and it's also proven that if you build this bold ambition, the partners will come to support you with financing, with academic help, with local community engagement and your inspiration. So I'll just close by saying that the future of the planet is not going to be set by gatherings in Davos with CEOs of the Fortune 500 companies. It's going to be set by the environment ministers. You're the ones who hold the most important positions in government. Many don't recognize it in the public, many in the media don't recognize it, many even in your own governments may not recognize it yet, but it's fundamental. And so I just want to congratulate you, all of your leadership that you have shown in recent years. You are showing in the Convention on Biological Diversity, the leadership you'll show at the UNEA meeting in Nairobi, the leadership that you showed in Glasgow is inspiring for the world. The world is noticing, and all of us in these smaller organizations stand ready to partner with you and work together to help make this leadership a reality. So thank you for all of your hard work.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for those inspiring words as well. Y para cerrar la lista.
And to close the list of speakers of this dialogue, we have Juliette Gutmann, the Director for Mexico and Central America, Cuba of the French Development Agency, FAD. Thank you, Juliette, for connecting and for being here, also participating in the dialogue. Please go ahead. Thank you very much, Andrea. Ministers, thank you for the invitation. It is a pleasure to be able to participate in this exchange and discussion. I am not going to go back to the challenges that the countries are facing or the need for the strategic alliances that have already been well described by the previous panel members. But I would like to insist particularly on the essential role of a type of stakeholder, and that's the public development banks. The public development banks from the different countries have a very important role in mobilizing resources, promoting innovative instruments, supporting the development of a favorable institutional environment, start alliances from different stakeholders, support and promote the involvement of the private sectors, and in addition to all the efforts that were described by the national governments at the subnational level, to accompany these public stakeholders also in this role. We believe that this is something essential. On behalf of the French Agency for Development, the Public Bank for Development, and the French government, we have been very committed in this support. Actually, it is also part of our strategic pillars to promote these partnerships. It is one of the strategic pillars, just as the struggle against climate change. And we have had, AFD has had worldwide a very important role in all this, and I would like to highlight particularly two initiatives: the role of AFD and all the institutions that are part of the International Development Finance, which is a club of regional and national banks of developed countries and developing countries, and that contributes very broadly to the agenda for development and climate action. In total, the 27 members of this platform represent over $600 billion of annual financial commitments, out of which over 150 billion of climate finance. So within the framework of this club, we have integrated a specific work group to see or to approach the dimension of biological diversity in addition to the struggle against climate change. And it's a very important job to be able to further integrate this dimension in a cross-cutting way in the support that we can have in the different countries. Another initiative that I would like to highlight, where AFD had a key role too, is the launching in November 2020 of the platform Finance in Common, which is the creation of a platform to gather the different public banks in the world, in all the continents of the world, create a worldwide dialogue platform that allows to exchange, to promote, to propose ideas to precisely face worldwide challenges. That is, the first forum got together in November 2020 in Paris. The second one was organized by the Italian Depositi di Prestiti House in 2021, and a new session has been scheduled for 2022. From the first meeting of this forum, we got an initiative, the Alliance of Subnational Banks for Development, the Alliance of Subnational Development Bank, Latin America and the Caribbean, an initiative that was started by the Brazilian Bank from Minas Gerais, the Global Fund for Cities Development, and the Institute for Sustainable Development of French International Relations. This initiative was officially launched at the beginning of 2021 and is working precisely at the Latin American level to promote new initiatives, new modalities of work, and not just at the national level, but at the subnational level. And that has a lot to do with the interventions that we just heard about, the importance of the action at the local level and the subnational level. So I thought it was important to complete a little bit the interventions, to insist about this particular stakeholder, and on behalf of the AFD, we've taken this into account. And in Latin America, we have fully integrated These are our interventions in addition to what we can do, supporting the national governments, subnational governments, and so on. And one of the examples is what we are doing in Costa Rica, supporting also the National Decarbonization Plan and supporting the government of Costa Rica, but also working with the National Bank in Costa Rica and other stakeholders for the implementation of this long-term decarbonization plan in the countries. Thank you very much. And of course, I am fully available on behalf of AFD to continue coaching you, working with you, and to continue playing this role at the level of Latin America as a platform in terms of the implementation of alliances with multiple stakeholders.
Muchísimas gracias, Juliet. Bueno, vamos.
We're going to open some time for dialogue. I have a request from Haiti. We also have the new Minister of Honduras, Mr. Loki Medina, that is connected virtually, and Andrea Alban from CEGIF, requesting the floor. Haiti, and then Mr. Loki Medina, Honduras. Good afternoon. Gracias por su Thanks for your attention. He's speaking French. We don't have a French interpreter. Thank you for your attention, and my colleague for his translation. I take this to thank you for your tolerance towards French speakers, because we don't speak Spanish. I was surprised hearing the president of the Costa Rica speaking very fluent French. I realize that you give a lot of importance to French. I ask you to give more attention to French in other initiatives. You will understand Haiti's interest, because we are the only French-speaking country but we share the same interests, environmental interests. I share the idea of the Cuba government the most important event for the country I start by taking of a very environmental shock. In 1 week, we've had more than 20 earthquakes in Haiti in different departments. So on behalf of the Haiti people and the First Minister, we thank the organizers of this event, through which we can express our interest in the environmental cause, not only of our country, but the whole region. And also to request more support towards the efforts already agreed. However, I would say that it is an incredible phenomenon that is the resilience of nature, that it won't let be defeated, that it's not dead. But we have to act quickly, supporting each other in the solutions-based, nature-based solutions. This warning to act now has been reinforced by many initiatives in global events, including today's event. We celebrate the 40th anniversary of this forum and the 30th anniversary of the Rio Summit. Global heating is crucial. Susceptible to be to unstable balance of the world, and also to expand the economic and social changes. We are not going to present again the biological corridor of the Caribbean. We leave this task to the Deputy Minister of Cuba, who we support her position, and we urge the creation of this platform of the biologic corridor for the meeting of different countries. We also encourage the almost religious meetings of the ministers. We can say that this initiative of the biological corridor, that we can advance in a very fruitful way, and we will get the expected results. Only together will we able to overcome this and guarantee the rehabilitation of our environment. We hope to have a global government of the world. We can see this defeat this challenge together.
Entonces tenemos
Thank you, Minister. So we have virtually the new Minister of Honduras, Lucky Medina. Lucky, thank you very much for getting connected. And it is a pleasure to meet you virtually. Please go ahead. Do you hear us? Good afternoon. It is a pleasure for me to join this Ministers Forum of Latin America and the Caribbean, understanding the priority of the environmental topics around all the modalities of cooperation that we could have for these topics that are priorities for us as a government that just took office yesterday with the first woman president in 200 years of history of the Republic of Honduras, the constitutional president Iris Xiomara Castro Sarmiento. I would like to greet you, Minister Andrea Mesa, and also Jacqueline Alvarez, Regional Director and Representative for Latin America and the Caribbean of IMEB, and our colleagues, ministers of the whole region. We would like to highlight in this first day in operations and functions that the constitutional president has made it clear that the environmental topic is amongst one of the 4 government priorities, accompanied by the fight against corruption, education that is necessary to go back to face-to-face classes at all levels, on the topic of public health that should be tackled immediately, as expressed in her opening speech yesterday. As you know, and has been discussed a lot in these fora, climate change has negative effects that are very high on what happens in the region, and particularly in Honduras. It always remains as one of the 3 more vulnerable countries with the effects of climate change. That same situation is reflected beyond all that analysis that we always make. So right here, we perceive that as forms of displacement of complete communities here in the dry corridor, for example, with hunger affects 1 out of every 4 children in that region, where unemployment is very high. And there are communities that have no other option than leaving their area, and this becomes a first stage from rural poverty to urban poverty. And secondly, also, it is presented as a migration phenomenon towards offshore, looking for new opportunities in Mexico or in the United States of America. This high vulnerability can be attended with certain regional efforts that we have proposed in our planning of the government. That's called Government Plan to refund Honduras in the period from 2022 to 2026. The constitutional period that lasts 4 years here, there is a lot of effort that we'll start doing jointly from the Secretariat of Natural Resources and Environment with the Secretariat of Agriculture and Livestock, with the Institute for Forest Preservation, with the public and private academies, and the institutions at the municipal level, with the municipalities as we call them here, and with the Secretariat of Government. But not all the problems can be solved in a punctual way just with the decisions that are made here. There are decisions that have to be, first of all, consulted, constructed, and applied jointly. The raising of funds for the region, everything that can be like transporter, environmental pollution, sea coastal topics, forest fires that may occur in those areas. That is also a priority for us, and we are really excited to be able to tackle all that. In addition, the government has progressive perspective in terms of a social vision, and we want to generate a lot of figures, not as hard statistics, but presented as high social benefit. What does this refer to? That behind each plan that we want to implement, we have to understand that there are families, beneficiaries, and the beneficiaries are not the institution. The institution is to coordinate, the institution is to serve, is to coach, but always aware of the fact and remembering every day that we should apply the necessary public policies for the people to empower these constructed practices, not just us, but with their support. In terms of the measurements of impact for the social, environmental, and economic combination that can lead towards sustainability, they are seen so far as priorities because Honduras is the most conflicted country for environment advocates throughout the region, in the Central American region, with some high indexes of violence expressed with murders to environmental advocates, with criminalization to the advocates of common goods, with legalization and stigmatization around the big corporations that have tried to affect the people that defend what others have been taken care of for decades and centuries. So precisely, and with the idea of listening to the people and all the efficiencies that have existed so far, we propose a possibility of reviewing the standards of climate justice that will all and for once give the necessary value, recognize those efforts that the communities have made, the indigenous groups, the Afro-descendant groups here in the country, to recognize the struggle, to recognize those ancient struggles, that ancient wisdom, that way of living. Those are areas where the natural resources are defended, and not just in the discourse. There are better living conditions, there are better conditions of sustainability. There's even some approaches to food sovereignty in these places of the country that are deployed in at least 9 territorial groups around all the Honduran territory, and also supporting those that look for some assistance of the institutions, that could be from the judicial branch or the executive or the legislative branch. The agenda is going to be constructed and approved from us as the main directors in the executive branch, but there are many reforms that, just because the way in which they are constructed in Honduras, they have to be approved from the National Congress of the Republic. And this would be moving forward with an environmental agenda to the future, and it is also one of the pillars that has already been established by the new board of directors that took office 3 days ago. So it's a pleasure to greet you at a distance, and we will be in touch soon. And from the Secretariat for Natural Resources and Environment in Honduras, you can count on us as a strategic partner. You can count on us as an open door institution where we can construct transparent processes that will bring direct benefits to the population, and that all these cooperation mechanisms can be complied with in priority terms. Greetings and have a great afternoon.
Thank you and good luck for Agnes administration. Next, we have Chile. Thank you. It's difficult to summarize and think about all the presentations. I want to congratulate all the speakers. Thank Pablo by his team with a permanent support, and key to advance in our ambition. Sign that collaborative levels is something that is part of Chile when assumed of COP25. There was a climate summit in the road to a COP, and they asked us to see the mitigation area. And that's how we have the Alliance for Climate Alliance that is particular. It joins 122 members of the action to achieve carbon neutrality in 2050. It was this we had appointed a more political case. We had our decision to appoint an entrepreneur, someone from the private sectors, and I think a very good contribution, the work of José Muñoz, together with the champion of COP26, with 2 campaigns in resilience with great results. We are talking about financial commitments for trillions of dollars. We have more than 500 universities that are part of this, more than 700 cities. We believe in the role of subnational governments at the lowest level, local governments, and that is the great challenge that we have as a country, how to get to local governments. And what we're doing with the support of the Green Climate Fund, ACAF, we are developing the first 4 regional plans for climate change, apart from the sectorial and tourism plans that we have implemented. So in that sense, because we live in this multi-sector, we're part of HAC, a Coalition for Nature and People, Blue Leaders, and all these partnerships that joins the stakeholders to achieve some goals. I think it's very important that we, as a result of this forum, can start working, because the diagnosis is shared. There are financial resources in the world. In the private sector, made the transformation. The great investors won't give their money and their funds in projects that are not sustainable. So I think the challenge for the region is that we can make our teams to work and identify a specific project where we all feel comfortable and have a resources from the region. So the invitation is that we work and identify certain areas and then socialize them. And then I joined the proposal made, the opportunities to open this space, but not only amongst us, the ministries of environment, but with academia, governments, and the youth. I think this is something that we can do because we understand when we do environmental management are effective, public policy are effective when there is a sense of ownership of the communities and civil society, and NDC and long-term climate strategy were strengthened after early consultation processes. As important as the result was the process. So it's important to involve all the stakeholders from the beginning, because at the end of the day, they have to feel they are part of the solution. And it's not a solution that has been imposed from the top. It has to be done by everyone. So count on Chile to identify a project and to support. So see how we can have a concrete project and go from the discussion phase to the implementation phase. Thank you, Minister, to include all the phases of the project since the beginning is very early. Now we have Jamaica.
so much, Madam Chair. Allow me to acknowledge, since it's likely the last time I get to make an intervention, the government of Costa Rica and their valuable hospitality. Certainly also Director Alvarez of the UNEP and her team for the work that has gone into this forum. I'll start by reminding colleagues of the discussion yesterday and the interconnectedness that they form: pollution, poverty, and indeed the pandemic. The only way we're going to tackle all three with any meaningful response and action is through effective partnership. As Mr. O'Donnell said, based on several factors, in many ways this could be considered one of the most important partnerships for nature, for environmental protection, and for the fight against climate change. The importance of establishing more partnerships and facilitating more dialogues like this one that will allow ministers and other key stakeholders to discuss initiatives, approaches, and solutions that could help alleviate the devastating economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic in Latin America and the Caribbean, which has affected many economic sectors on which people's livelihood depends, goes without saying. In Jamaica, indeed, the entire region, the pandemic has unveiled how fragile key economic sectors are, such as tourism and agriculture. It has generated a sense of urgency to bring more solutions, engage in fruitful and lasting partnerships, and engage more effectively with the private sector, academia, public sector, civil society, and youth to bring about greater predictability, stability, and sustainable prosperity. In Jamaica, our actions follow a strategic roadmap. To help us achieve our goals for sustainable development and prosperity, we subscribe to our Vision 2030. It presents a comprehensive vision of our National Development Plan, and one of its key principles is indeed partnership. As we recognize that this vision can only be realized by targeted plans and programs that require long-term collaboration with national and international stakeholders. Similarly, as signatories to all multilateral environmental agreements, the MEAs, Jamaica places priority in delivering on our commitments, including those embedded in our updated nationally determined contributions. From a governance point of view, the MEAs are guided by our Vision 2030 and require us to engage in all aspects of society to achieve our commitments and transform our society. The government prides itself in its bilateral and multilateral relationships with international development partners, international and national organizations, and indeed our neighbors. I refer to our meeting this morning with the UNEP, and I think it was a very good first step as we continue to grow that relationship from strength to strength. An example and story of true partnership, however, can be seen manifested in Jamaica's role as member and co-chair of the NDC partnership. Here we have been intimately involved in the intensive and valuable work being delivered by the partnership to support developing countries' drive, climate ambition, and economic recovery. On that note, we also wish to formally acknowledge Pablo Vieira for his tireless work and the strength of the partnership. Prior to taking this leadership role, Jamaica was already a beneficiary of the technical support provided by the partnership. This support was key for us in delivering well ahead of COP26 and enhanced NDC, which was technically sound, grounded in policy, ambitious, and indeed achievable. We continue to benefit from the constant support of the partnership, but beyond that, we have engaged in multi-stakeholder dialogues, learned from the experience of other members, and developed robust plans and strategies. We are at a juncture where partnerships are required to bolster our green private sector initiatives, develop investment-ready bankable projects, and to better serve our citizens. This is indeed where we all in this room need to strategize together and facilitate each other's engagement. Just for note, Jamaica also chairs the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center, the 5Cs, coordinating a regional response to projected climate change impacts and its economic and social implications. And to note, I would have heard my colleague from Cuba mention the Caribbean Biological Corridor, the Northern Caribbean of Cuba, Haiti, Dominican Republic, and Puerto Rico. And indeed this is something Jamaica would like to join. There are some steps we will have to take, but we expect that to happen in the first half of this year, in the spirit of partnership. This type of regional partnership and general engagement strengthens our regional coordination capacity, fosters collaboration, and further generates meaningful partnerships with complementary regional and international organizations to benefit our communities. In closing, a partnership is only as fruitful and lasting when it's developed with common vision in mind, and they need to be flexible and resilient. It is the private sector that invests and trades. It is the NGOs that act as implementers of community action. It is the universities that do the research, which must be translated for development of projects and programs. Colleagues, we need to cooperate across borders to solve the environment and climate crises. We have to change and become true partners to each other. I thank you.
Now I have on my list Sahib Andrea Alban, and after that Jair Urreola from CCAD, and then Agnes Soares from OPS. Andrea.
Muchísimas.
Thank you, dear Minister, to give me to open the floor on behalf of my country. Special greetings to all ministers of environment of Latin America and the Caribbean, and Jacqueline Alvarez, director of the UNEP office, in the opening of the Ibero-American Environmental Week. Also, greetings to the panelists who talk about the diversity and creativity we have to have in mind when we refer to partnerships, and reflects how important it is to join efforts to achieve urgent and common goals as the environmental challenges. In our institution, there are many stakeholders, where there are national and local governments, congresses of civil society, companies, and connect them with a political meeting of the highest level as the Ibero-American Summit of the Government. In 2018, the heads of state and government gave a mandate for delineation for the Agenda 2030. Since then, we have dedicated our efforts for new ways of collaboration. We have proposed to capitalize that alignment to establish partnerships in the multiplicity of topics. In 2018, the General Ibero-American Secretariat started the new environmentalist and put at its service the Ibero-American Congregation in September 2010. After 10 years of a stop or a pause, the meeting of ministers of environment will restarted, understanding the power of these countries, so the countries can comply, fulfill their achievements, and to strengthen joint work with the program of United Nations for Environment. We wanted to participate because we want to put at the disposal the network of processes in the Ibero-American office with heads of state. Also, put at your disposal the know-how of Ibero-American cooperation that has horizontality, where everyone contributes according to their capabilities. In words of Rebecca Greenspan, Costa Rican, no country can say they don't have nothing to learn or none that has nothing to teach. In Sahib, we have experience establishing different actors. One is the Ibero-American Observatory of Environment and Climate Change for in different levels, international government and academia, based on partnership that has been key to position the environment topic in our agenda. I want to say some opportunities that from CEGIP and coordination in both instances, we can establish strategic alliances for the service of countries and environment. In the first time, from the discussions, we see a need of dialogue to exchange experiences in all topics. I'm sure that we can cooperate in the support to concrete initiatives that you identified and help in their documentation. The one directors and climate change office meteorological services can be of great support. I would like to send an invitation to UNEP to be part of the observatory of the Ibero-American meeting in the framework of Ibero-American framework in Dominican Republic. This report has been key to strengthen environmental topics and strategic collaboration to visualize key topics in our agendas. Finally, I want to what the Minister Correa said is key to work and strengthen existing coalitions. In this sense, I want to announce the interest of CEGIP to become part to the initiative of circular economy and support interactions for the development of skills and technical assistance for development of public policies. Thank you for this time, and I join the words of Patricia Espinosa in this availability of international organizations, in this case CEGIP, to support countries and work together for action. Thank you.
Gracias, Andrea.
Thank you, Andrea. Now we give the floor to Jair Oriola from Society, and I would ask Jair as well as to, I'm sorry, but I was looking at the Vice Minister. To please, because I mean, we want to remain within our time frame, so let's try to manage time better. Thank you, Jair. Thank you, Minister. First of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation as the chair of the forum and the executive direction of PNUMA for taking this executive secretariat of the CCID into account. I think that this is part of the alliances we have been talking about during the afternoon. We, as environmental organization of the Central American Integration System, is very important for us to participate in this forum. We would have liked to be there in person as has been planned, but however, because of force majeure reasons, we couldn't. The topics that we approached yesterday, as well as those that have taken place during the whole day today, there has been a very fruitful space even to go back to some of the topics that, as ministers of the integrating system of the CCID, we approach jointly during the climate change COP. It is already known by everyone that climate change is a multiplying factor of problems, not just environmental, but also social and economic, and that is why it is very important for us to have priority access to those financial mechanisms established by the conventions, climate change, biological diversity, and the fight against the certification that we had, and ASICA, as the region of Central America and the Dominican Republic, we have ratified that universal principle of common responsibilities, but differentiated as well as capacities. It is important to ensure the mobilization of resources and means of implementation, financial resources, technological transfer, education, capacity building, which are things that have also been mentioned throughout these two very intense days, and that is why we support the adoption of those firm decisions that facilitate a soon and expedite availability of resources for them to be timely available, not just in quantity but also quality. but highly prioritizing the vulnerabilities, as has been mentioned by the representative of the Green Fund and Carlos Manuel from GIVE and the representative from the CAF and the World Bank and so on. For this reason, we have to make sure that these financial contributions are significantly increased with new resources, with predictable resources, and additional to the active or official assistance that is given to development. In the Sika region, our countries, the agricultural sector and livestock sector are highly relevant for our economy, and we have to prioritize the climate actions for food security and poverty reduction. And this has been a priority for the Council of Ministers of the CCAD. Actually, we are working intersectorally for several years, for example, with the Regional Center for Disaster Prevention and the Regional Committee of Hydraulic Resources in a project that strengthens the regional resilience in floods and droughts, by the way, financed by the European Union through the Euroclima Plus program that was mentioned by Felice Saqueo this afternoon. And with the Agriculture and Livestock Council since 2020, we have been working in an initiative to restore 10 billion hectares of degraded lands by 2030 and reach carbon neutrality, what we know as these neutrality to 2040. So there's going to be in a couple of weeks a forum of ministers of agriculture in the Sika region in Panama as the pro tempore chair, and we hope, and we're making all the work together with the Secretariat of Agriculture to also involve the economy sector in order to promote this common agenda of our region. And we are sure that we're going to be able to make it, just as we have been working with other stakeholders such as tourism, energy, SMEs, and others. The strategic challenges towards the construction of a more sustainable and resilient Latin American Caribbean, I summarize that in a single phrase: work intersectorially in our countries and at a regional scale. Once again, I want to thank you for the invitation, and I hope that I can continue providing my contributions in the regional vision of Latin America and the Caribbean. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you for your intervention. And I have Nelson Ares from OPCS and Dominican Republic. Thank you for giving you the words. It's a pleasure to be here. Greetings to the ministers and technical support, and I congratulate you for this important forum. I'm the technical part of PAHO, and that is the regional office of World Health Organization. We are complementary organizations, and we reinforce our work if we're doing in cooperation, and this is something that I would like to talk about. WHO and PAHO have a formal agreement, and there are topics that we discuss during these days of pollution, climate change, and all the topics related to chemical safety, and in the region with solid waste, because there's an effort to eliminate landfills and specific topics as antimicrobial resistance and food production and combat to malnutrition. I want to invite you to reinforce to include the search for solutions that protect life in our planet. When you prioritize actions with immediate effect as those who protect public health, there's a human dimension that is measurable and can show the success of the investments that are so necessary. I could say a lot, but I'm going to mention some topics that I consider that are exemplary. One is air pollution. It's a public health priority, and we talked about the impact on mortality and disease, mortality related to this, and we work with Great Life. On September 21st, WHO sent new guidelines for air quality, and there is an important serious challenge in a region. None of our countries complies with the guidelines, and this is an important challenge, and it's not only environmental, it's a public health challenge. And there are just a few cities that comply. It's not the minimum of the countries, and that's why to work jointly, considering the environmental impact and to measure the impact in all cities that will want to work on this, would be key to accelerate this process of clean air. But there's something in particular regarding air quality, and I talk about this topic because it's a pending topic. It's more than 90 million people, 30% of population of the Americas cook with solid fuels or for heating. In the states members of PAHO, they consider as elimination of disease the elimination of solid fuels to be used for cooking. In 2019, we know that poverty it's also part of the situation and the pandemic, but it is part of the objectives of it is health. In 14 of the 35 pieces, there is 10% more of the population that still use solid waste in our region. A third of the exposed populations are in the countries Mexico and Peru, but there are others in Brazil. Less than 5% are still using solid waste. These actions are needed, but we hear that it's also necessary to reduce fossil fuel. If we don't consider that to eradicate poverty and reduce child mortality and better the welfare of the population, we require to keep the use of LP gas, as many of the countries who can transition to this in the energy ladder. So to think in this complexity when we deal of achieving SDGs and consider health as a core point is the invitation we make, and we are at your disposition only to cooperate in the topics we already work, but also to put at the disposal of the countries and the ministries of environment with help in those topics to reach the acceleration of sustainable development. Thanks for the opportunity and congratulations.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much, Dominican Republic. Thank you, Minister. I want to reiterate the thanks from the Dominican Republic for being here, and obviously to apologize again on behalf of the Minister and Vice Ministers because I had to leave. Everything is okay, so thank you. Two punctual things. The first one is to thank both Cuba as well as Haiti for the leadership and the push for this biological corridor of the Caribbean. Of course, the good news of Jamaica to move from an observer to an active member. We would immediately proceed to take the next steps for this to be a reality. And obviously, putting the corridor to the whole forum as a space of experience of a South-South cooperation that started with an idea of two ministers 15 years ago, and today we still want to promote it and turn it into a reality. Said this, I want to thank Andrea Alban for bringing to the forum the Ibero-American Work Group, the summit that is going to be in the Dominican Republic at the end of this year, reiterate the request to UNEP for them to be with us in the elaboration of the report of the Observatory for Sustainable Development. It is very important for us to count on all of you and take advantage of the space to extend the invitation, because we're organizing a forum of Ibero-American ministers within the framework of the pro tempore chair of the Dominican Republic, and we will eventually send you information about this, and we hope that we can count on you and with the leadership that you have expressed in this forum, in this small forum, because unfortunately the pandemic made us be few people here, but it's been a gratifying experience where we have been able to talk. And I would only leave a phrase that has been said many times by several ministers and the President of Costa Rica in his participation, and is that we should go from planning to action. So thank you. Thank you, ministers and vice ministers, delegates. I was going to make a proposal. At this moment, what we have in the agenda is the coffee break, and then come back and then make the report of the day-to-day. But if you allow me, maybe I can make a synthesis of what the notes are, so that then you go grab the coffee and we don't have to come back. So maybe that could be better. And in that line, it is also important to tell you that we're going to be circulating, we're going to generate a report, which is basically the summary of what I have been telling you as the chair's summary. That is, the summary from the chair, this document. We're going to be circulating it in 1 week, approximately. We're going to check it, we're going to review it. I have taken notes, the secretary has taken notes. So we're going to bring things together and try to leave all the contributions very well visible, the ideas and so on. But if you want, is it okay we do it that way? Excellent. And then after that, what I was telling you, 5:30, we are going to have the ceremony for the celebration of the 40 years of the forum close to the golf court. I know it's going to be close to the golf court. We have certain activities, so please go there. It's going to be the time to share a little bit more in a more relaxed space. The video from Nicaragua. True. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, we have to watch the video from Nicaragua, and then I make the summary, if you agree. Biodiversity, nature-based solution. Preserving our biodiversity is a priority for the Reconciliation and National Unit Government. From the Ministry of the Environment and the Natural Resources, we design and implement national strategies with the participation of families and communities. From the beginning of 2020, we got the National Strategy Biodiversity, Your Nature-Based Solution, with the objective of certifying family businesses, in this case, some breeding places for animals, so that we can have species raised in captivity. This national strategy, coordinated by Marena, has been successful. Since the month of January 2020 to the month of July 2021, we have certified 236 sow breeders at the national level. For this year 2021, we have established as a goal the certification of 104 new breeders, being able to certify to date 84 of them, representing 82% compliance. as a measure for the sustainability and the use of the species raised in captivity, and as a contribution to the enrichment population of these species in their natural environment, who are developing a release plan, having released to this date 621 breeds of the green iguana, the black iguana, cola chata, the green red-eyed frog, glass frog, geckos, and others. By modernizing the system to follow up this special strategy, Marena has designed a software that contains the main indicators for the follow-up and the control of the animals, designed for the territorial delegations in coordination with the General Direction of National Natural Patrimony and Biodiversity to implement this in real time. We continue moving forward hand in hand with our protagonists that are owners of the breeding areas in the natural patrimonies.
Guarda
42 times 19 Roads of Victories, Minister of the Environment and Natural Resources, Marena, Reconciliation Government and National Unit. Okay, thank you all very much for your flexibility with these adjustments. So we will make the synthesis of what we saw today. I think it was also a very productive day where we put again forth the importance of aligning these agendas, climate sustainability agendas, conservation in general, with the development agendas. And in this, it becomes essential to have clear long-term goals, investment plans, projects, and programs at a scale. We're not going to be able to make the systemic transformation that is required if we do not do that fundamental mobilization of the resources. A mobilization of resources that requires a lot of innovation also, that requires that we recognize all the challenges that the region has with that little fiscal space, that high level of indebtedness, which is a point that was put forth on the table in order to also consider in that line a certain flexibility of the agencies of the cooperating countries, that we start understanding that it is important to talk about that exchanges by nature, resilience, decarbonization, because that is going to allow the states to start having investment plan and some stimulus plan that are more aggressive in an infrastructure that can be compatible precisely with those international goals. We also have the possibility of working in some areas with high levels of biomass, that potentiation of bioeconomy, understanding the new policies of energy transformation, but it's key that we do not see this just as extraction economy, but the idea is to give value added both to that nature as well as to lithium or any of these strategic resources that may be there, precisely to generate greater growth and so on. And for this we would require a lot of knowledge and technology transfer that will bring us there. There is some biomass that allows us to make additional or regional efforts that are very interesting. Some people here talked about the biological corridor of the Caribbean, the Amazons, what OTCA is doing with the specific finance, the marine corridor of the Pacific, 5 or 6 forests in Mesoamerica. And these are precisely opportunities to develop financial mechanisms, specific financial mechanisms, to collaborate and to understand how that great natural wealth is turned into well-being for our countries. It's key in the mobilization of the investments of the private sector, and will require conditions that we have heard about, and it's worth putting them here again. legal security, clear rules, and especially long-term plans, because these transformations cannot be accomplished at the short term. And in that sense, we have the possibility of using and will require the work of all the government and all society. And this is where the topics of the partnerships and the collaborative platforms and those public-private partnerships become fundamental, both for that work with the different sector ministries as well as with the central ministries, the banks, central banks, financial entities, multilaterals. And in that line, the vehicles, the indices, and the long-term strategies allow us to have that approach of looking at the whole economy, and that is an opportunity to continue mobilizing resources and the scale, and the importance of bringing to the table and listening to those local stakeholders. We saw and we put on the table the importance of the subnational governments. This is making a dialogue that may be interesting to strengthen this forum at a given moment, some space where we can interact. Likewise, a space like this one that is more informal, in a forum that we have the ministers of the environment, and you can listen to the subnational governments, and there is also a possibility of having the forum of ministers of the environment, for example, with ministers of finance or planning. These elements are going to guarantee that the ministers of the environment are empowered. This has been a key message, and that you become central and fundamental stakeholders in all the transformation. And this point, the partnerships and all this work within the framework of the partnerships can also be critical to go farther. That has been a recurrent message in several of the presentations and of the dialogues that we have had. I think that has been a hyper-synthesis, but I think that those were the main ideas, or if there is any element, please let me know. And as I said, with this, first of all, I would like to thank you all for being here. This is not an easy moment, coming all the way here. I know the fear all the COVID things generate. I know that for many of you this has been a great effort, but we really appreciate that you have come, that you are here. I think that there is an announcement that Chile wants to make before we make the closing here. Thank you, Madam Chair.
No lo dije.
It's not in your summary because I didn't say it before. I want to say that during the February 2021 forum, there was a specific adoption of equality of gender was included into environmental agenda. As you know, we receive environmental agenda work and enhance the active participation of 18 countries of the region. And we are summoning to a regional meeting in Latin America, the Caribbean, from March 23rd to 26th, with the support of UNEP, of course. This is not closing. These are not closing words, just logistics. That is always my duty. 3 or 4 key messages. First, that beyond the chair's summary, there's going to be a report. Peru is a rapporteur. When it has been validated by the chair, it will be reviewed and can be considered the formal report. The high meeting officials for March is still to see where we're going, where we are. This chair presidency continues to end the end of 2023 or 24. That will be the next forum. There's a lot of work in the middle, in the meeting of technical committee for interagencies. For the friends of this forum, this will be organized between February this year. And lastly, very important, I hope to see you, all of you, at UNEA. Please register. Only 2 countries of the region have registered. UNEA's word is your voice of environment ministers, the voice we need to listen to. Your presence will be extremely necessary at this moment. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Jacqueline. I didn't want to close this session without thanking the technical team and logistic team and all the team that has organized this meeting, and it has been huge. I would ask for an applause for all of them. Thank you to UNEP, the Secretariat, and all of you. Will meet at 5:30 close to the golf course. Thank you.